All right, guys, in today's video, why 99% of tour pros do this move. It's something that Trevor and I talk about all the time. It's something, if you want your golf swing to be consistent and reliable day to day, that you want to have in your swing as well. And of course, we're talking about, Trevor, staying on plane. We're going to give you a couple feels and drills, explain why it's so important, how you can do it and get your swing started and finished correctly to get that consistent golf swing. Mr. Trevor Salzman to my right, appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming back out. So Trevor, let's talk about how we start the golf swing and staying on plane. I've seen you do a couple videos on this. I know we built a little wall here to give them a visual.
Absolutely.
Maybe if we can see the sort of level to the ground visual, what staying on plane is, some of the goods and bads. Let's kind of work through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think if we look at the golf swing, one of the hard things, one of the difficult things about it is understanding how we're taking an angular plane and how this actually works and how it stays on plane. One of the easy ways to look at this from a visual standpoint is if we take, let's say we took the golf club and we started it parallel to the ground. Well, this would be very easy right here. This would be where an arc and a straight line, they would begin, and this is where they meet. Okay? So if we look, if I were to keep this parallel to the ground and I worked this back around my spine, we can obviously see, we can see how this golf club would actually start to work in. So this would be right here. What you'll notice is I don't have any deviation in what the golf club is doing, which also means I wouldn't have any forearm roll, which would drop it below parallel to the ground. I wouldn't have a lot of up and a lot of lift right here, which would take it off the plane. This golf club would be starting right here on this wall, and it would work itself in. And this is probably our most simplistic way of making sure that we start ourselves on plane, so that we have the feel initially here in the beginning pieces of our golf swing, that we now have the feel to actually get that back onto plane on the downswing. I think it's a very, very important piece for people to understand. It's a really important place to start.
Yeah, Trevor, you take your setup again, and just to confirm for you guys, we're talking on plane, and we'll show some visuals on the screen. If Trevor takes his setup and we were to draw a line right up his shaft plane at setup, and he do a little takeaway, Trevor, let's just go P2.
Absolutely, so if we went here,
so when he goes back, and what you're going to see is, and the images on the screen, on plane means that club head is going to ride relatively on that line. Let's go back to setup again, Trevor. Club is going to ride on that line up to about club parallel to his hands. Let's do that one more time. So when he gets in this position, this club head, what are we looking for here? Kind of even with the hands?
So yeah, so this right here, I think it's really important to say that this golf club right here should be relatively even with the hands. Where I think a lot of players get in trouble is if we started this way, we'd be running into that wall. If we worked this way inside and we started to roll, that's going to be working well off a plane. And now as soon as we get this golf club off a plane, now we're going to be in the form of compensation somewhere, some shape and form in our motion to get it back on plane. So I think it's a lot easier is if we can just set our plane simplistically right here. Now I've got a relationship for where I'm trying to get that golf club back to where it can re-arc back to where the golf ball is.
And one of the things, Trevor, let's flip for 1 second, with this wall that I like, and I think you guys will really like this too, if I were to hold the club parallel, and I saw Trevor do this to the ground, and I think the reason why this is such a good feel, if I take this back like you mentioned, Trevor, and I go to about even with my hands in this position, there was absolutely no excessive arm rotation, forearm rotation, or shoulder rotation.
100%. It's a very passive, very simplistic movement right there.
And if I took that same feel down with the ball, we're saying if I felt no excessive shoulder or arm rotation, that would automatically put me in that spot we want.
Exactly. Like another good way of doing it, if you go back down there, is like, so here would be another relationship of this. Eric can work this back in. You can see how that's working in. And then he gets the club right here to line up more with his hands through here. And so we can see that golf club is planing itself naturally. So we've got this wall right here. Well, this would be his hand path line right here now as well. You can see there's no change in what the forearm here is doing. Exactly. There's no change. There's no lift. He's just working that in, keeping that golf club more on plane, making it very simple to get the golf swing started.
And I think two questions on there, Trevor. I think one thing what we're saying is, hey, if we watch these players and we draw that line up the shaft, they're getting the club on plane early. Listen, could they go off plane and get back on plane and make it work? Absolutely.
For sure.
But is that more difficult to do? Absolutely.
I would agree.
And so if you're not playing and practicing as much, especially, that can be more difficult. The easier thing to do would be to keep it on plane on the way back, like Trevor said, to make it easier to get back on plane on the way down. The second thing is, Trevor, if I'm like this, I would assume you see people like the correct way, like we said, my arms and tabletop. If there's like a line above them, they sort of go back with no manipulation. That's what we want. That's what good players do.
Exactly.
I think a lot of players, when they do this initially, would kind of go like this.
They would go like this, and I even think more so. I even think a lot of times if they were right here, we would actually see this golf club go under. It would go lower. So what you'll see when Eric does this, you can see how the club plane, this is basically maintaining the height of this is staying on the same plane as what this height where it started right there. Where we see people who forearm roll, this would start to drop underneath its initial starting point. Or if we see people who are lifters, now we're off plane. So those are the issues that I see people running into when they're trying to understand what their takeaway should be feeling like.
So like I'm on the top of the six with my club head. I'm literally, you're saying, I'm staying that same height, and I feel like there's no change in this little angle on top of my arms.
Exactly.
Okay, so if I bring that same feel into here, that puts me right into, yeah, that's good. I like that a lot. Let me just clip one out there with that little feel here. So same little feel with the takeaway.
Pretty solid there.
Yeah. All right, guys, so I really like that level to the ground version that Trevor showed. There was another little drill here, right, that I want to go over with Trevor for you guys too. Maybe that level to the ground does or doesn't give you the feels that you want, but this is another way to gather those feels. So what's drill number 2 here, Trevor?
So the number one thing that I like to use, I like to educate players on what actually causes what we do, and also what are we looking for out of the body to get us into what that actual position is. So a lot of people might understand that yes, the golf club's getting under, but again, the question then becomes, why is it getting under? So it's like, what can we look at from a relationship standpoint on our body anatomically that can keep us there? So what I like to look at here is I've got myself taped up. So I've got my wrist joint here. I've got what would be a relationship for my elbow joint. I've got a relationship that would be roughly right here, my shoulder joint. So right in here, like if we looked at this, I have the ability to move my forearm away from my elbow. Okay?
That's a cool visual.
I can also rotate my shoulder, which would then move my elbow and then also move my wrist right there. So when we look at what that does, well, if I move this whole entire unit right here, now where's that golf club going to be starting? Well, now most of us, here's our over-the-top person, they go here. Now the weight of the club's going to have to shift that direction, so we're in an immediate form of compensation. So what I like to do, like if I took an alignment stick on my foot right here, so if I put this roughly on my foot line here, for me, I like to get these 3 joints, the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist, lined up here on my body line with the shaft right here. So this way I can see right in here, I've still got my hands relatively low, but I've got this joint, and this joint all lined up here. Now the club can work itself up on this plane, and I also have a feel of getting it back to where this plane is from this visual station and from this feedback right here. Yeah. And that's what we're doing to keep that golf club on plane. If I went this direction, obviously this joint is no longer here. If I lifted, those aren't going to be in line anymore. If I roll, that's where all of these things start to move out of line anatomically, which then affect the golf club, our face-to-path relationship, which then makes it harder to make the golf ball go to where our intended target is.
No fun. I like that. So literally that's a great visual. If you get those 3 pieces of tapes, the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist in line, your takeaway and club are going to be on plane.
Exactly.
And then said different, if that's true, if those are not in line, it's then automatically going to be off plane, which means I'm going to need to do more work later to get it on plane. Did I repeat what you said pretty good there?
Now I'm going to have to compensate to get it back on plane. If the wrist starts here, so I've got the elbow, roughly got the shoulder and the elbow, but the wrist is way away from this, and look where the club head is. Now I'm going to have some
work to get it back.
Crazy form of compensation to get those back on plane.
And Trevor, I know with this, we would typically, I saw you set up like a little plane station with this. Can you show us how we do that? Let's put that in there.
So what we would do here is I would go 1 foot width inside of where the target line would be.
1 foot width inside the target line, okay.
I would set this right here on the ground parallel to the target line. I would then from here, I would take 1 step. I would put this on the ground on the inside portion of this, and this would now rest this would now rest right here on the exact same plane of whatever club it is that I'm using. So now I can take this relationship. Can I borrow one of those real quick again? Now I can take this relationship. I've got this relationship. So there's my foot line, there's my target line, there's my plane. Everything right here is on plane. So now I can feel this, work this up, work this back down. So now I'm creating a feel of what it's like to start out on plane, how to return it on plane, basically putting myself in a position to be more consistent.
I love that, Trevor. I think for you guys watching this, there's 3 different little visuals and options there. Number 1 is learning how to get the club parallel to the ground. I think that's such a good visual that Trevor said, keep the club head in the same height and no manipulation of the arms. The tape on the arms and getting the joints in line as option number 2. And then setting up a plane station as option number 3. All 3 of those that you can do and practice. Like Trevor always says, start slow, hold the positions, using mirror and videos to learn this stuff. But I think that's a really good starting point, Trevor, to get you guys on plane early so you have less work to do to get back on plane during the downswing. We show Adam Scott's swing all the time because I like his. And Mary, we probably done a million videos. I draw a line up his shaft, he goes right up it during the takeaway, and guess where he comes on the way down? Right back down. And all those guys from hip high to hip high, like Trevor talks about, they stay on plane on the way back and on the way through. That's so important. 3 simple ways to do that. Trevor, appreciate you.
Pleasure.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. We're going to put Trevor's info down below. If you haven't checked out his stuff yet, we'll put his Instagram, online lessons, in-person lessons. Trevor's a great coach down here in South Florida. Check that out. CogornoGolf.com will also put on there. Would love to work with you.